Chapter 24. Swelling Tides. Summary. Just because they took down the two kidnappers doesn't mean they're out of the woods yet. Before long, the two aliens were secured with the remnants of rope she and Izuku had been tied with. Though, Ochako mused, it appears as if they didn't really need it. The tentacled sentient was still out cold, while the bulky sentient was frozen still, just glancing over towards Katsuki with abject fear every few seconds. They were still waiting on Mei to see whether or not their kidnappers had made contact with the Trellins. No one decided to follow her. Izuku probably would have, if he wasn't still wrapped up around Katsuki. Denki had looked tempted, but ultimately stayed put. In the meantime, though, they should figure out what to do about the two criminals. They knew that any kind of trafficking or kidnapping was illegal throughout the universe, so they didn't need to worry about the specific laws of this planet. Most rules on the planet seemed to be similar to Earth, as well as the presence of law enforcement. But they weren't provisional heroes on this planet. What the others had done would definitely fall under vigilantism. Mina was the one to break the silence.
So what do we do now? What if the traffickers know we're here? The ship isn't ready for sure. Let's not worry about the traffickers until Mei comes back. But we do need to figure out what to do with these two, Ochako said, gesturing back to the tied-up aliens. Denki was still a little shaken when he spoke up.
Can't we just call the police or something? The tablet can do that, right? But Mei has it.
Can't really do that, dumbass.
Katsuki's gruff voice sounded from where he was being cuddled by Izuku.
Doubt the law enforcement appreciate vigilante justice coupled with excessive force. Plus, they might actually recognize what we are, or need statements. If we call it in, it has to be anonymous.
Ochako spoke up again.
Katsuki's right. We can't let them know we're here, but we also can't let these villains go free. Maybe we can get someone else to call it in? Or maybe we can call or message from their computer or whatever they have when Mei's done. They could just track the location when they get here and we could be long gone,
Izuku added.
In that case, we should clean up all your blood, nerd. Wouldn't want any DNA evidence,
Katsuki replied.
What blood?
Izuku said, confusion evident in his voice, before he looked down at his sluggishly bleeding arms and splattered red on the floor.
Oh. I can melt it with my acid, way easier than trying to wash it away,
Mina said, leaving an embarrassed Izuku to get to work, not wasting any time melting away any trace of blood from the floor, cage, and even walls. Izuku's arms still slowly bled, already staining Katsuki's clothes, though now that Izuku was aware he's bleeding, he looked like he was trying to be more careful.
Here, let me get your arms,
Denki said to Izuku, before ripping his poncho into strips. All across Izuku's skin, little scratchy wounds were dribbling blood. The distinct rope pattern wasn't too hard to pick out once Denki wiped away all the blood he could. It was bad luck that Izuku hadn't been wearing something that covered more of his skin today. When Denki was finished, Izuku's entire arms were mummy-wrapped, with only small splotches of blood soaking through. His head was also bandaged when Katsuki pointed out the blood-matted hair, prompting Izuku to admit he'd been knocked unconscious and might have a mild concussion. Not long after Denki and Mina finished with their respective tasks, Mei returned.
Okay, so they sent a message, but I was able to corrupt the outgoing file. Those things take a while to send across galaxies, and it was caught in time, so when the Trellins get it, all they'll see is a word mistake, so we should be safe.
The group let out a collective sigh they hadn't realized they were holding. They were safe. The Trellin traffickers didn't know they were here. But this had been close. Too close. They were too careless and unprepared. They would need to make some changes with how they went about things. But for now, it was time to go home. So, with a quick anonymous tip-off to the authorities using the computer, they were off. The walk back to the station was nerve-wracking. The other teens practically surrounded Izuku and Ochako the whole way there, the group keeping track of every little thing going on around them, but not within the group. Izuku felt like he was coming apart at the seams. Now that the danger had passed, he was distinctly ignoring the tone Mei had used when she said they should be safe. And no one needed to be saved. He didn't know what to do with himself. With the growing storm of less than healthy brain thoughts approaching on the horizon. Despite the relatively large and open space of the train, thanks to the larger height of most sentients, Izuku couldn't help the distressed whimper that left him upon stepping into the enclosed tube. He hated this. He had been finally getting better. After all the time away from the trafficker ship, he had finally been doing better. But now, Izuku felt like he was back to square one. It wouldn't be forever, he knew. But it was still a step backwards rather than forwards. One very, very big step. But as Ochako held him close and started to hum as they found some empty seats, he thought to himself, maybe this little space of family could help lessen the number of varies in his setbacks. As the six of them walked through the forest, Izuku couldn't help circling back to the last hour. 2? He wasn't really sure how much time had passed with getting knocked unconscious, a possible concussion, some hard dissociation, and ghost Uno. The things that tentacled alien had said about selling him. Seems like he just got a new nightmare topic for his brain to torment him with. And Izuku thought a fighting ring was the worst place their original traffickers could have been sending them. Well, besides human experimentation. Based on what All for One had achieved back on Earth, he was not eager to see what a space psychopath had come up with. But his brain couldn't help but imagine. His brain also couldn't help but think back to what First had said to him in the void. Izuku had only half considered telling his friends about his quirk in the past. He had still felt like it wasn't his secret to tell, and that by doing so, he would be breaking All Might's trust. But First had said it was okay, and he was the original quirk holder. If it was anyone's quirk, it was his. Yet, First insisted that One for All was Izuku's. Even though it was still locked away for now, it was Izuku's wholeheartedly. At least, if he believed the vestige, but Izuku's brain had its fair share of doubts. Well, less fair share, and more enough to smother a small city's worth. But maybe talking about it with his friends could help. On the other hand, maybe they would hate him for lying to them for so long. What if they thought he didn't trust them because he was only just telling them now? He trusted them more than he thought it was possible to trust anyone. He doesn't know if he could deal with them not trusting him because he was keeping secrets. They've all become a little codependent since their abduction, and Izuku knows he couldn't survive without them now. But he doesn't know how much longer he can keep these thoughts inside of him. Now that he didn't have anyone to help, he didn't have anything to focus on. Most of the toxic thoughts that lived rent-free in his head all stemmed from one thing: his past quirklessness, and his now temporary quirklessness. It always came back to that. The little box that Izuku had shoved all his problems into when he started UA was rotting like unrefrigerated meat in a heat wave, festering slowly and creeping into his mind. Guess it's time for some spring cleaning. Izuku stopped in the middle of the path back. He didn't feel like trying to talk in basic right now, so
Best get it over with. The others could always tell Pyerpa and Fastel for him, right? So Izuku slumped to the ground in a heap. He didn't know if he could do this right now. He just felt so exhausted, but he needed to do this. First was right when he said Izuku's brain wasn't nice to him. He knew he had a not so healthy amount of self-loathing on a good day. But right now, every step felt like he was drowning, sinking deeper and deeper. He was falling apart inside, and no one would notice unless he let them in. Let them help.